As you turned to the dance on the dance floor, you caught sight of Cove dancing hand in hand with your parents. Cove's brow was furrowed in concentration as he very carefully took each step. Despite his obvious nerves, your moms are elated and seemed to be encouraging him. The sight of it cheered you as you moved back towards Cliff and Kyra. Cliff made to bow out at that point, intending to make way for you to dance with Kyra again, but she had other plans. She grabbed his hand and yours, and you danced together as a group. After a little while, she released Cliff's hand, and you danced with her one-on-one again. What if I wanted to dance with Cliff an extra time? Why did you assume I wanted to dance with Kyra an extra time? Cliff I knew longer. Before long, you swapped back to dancing with Cliff. There we go. Thank you. Keep it at least balanced. You took turns dancing with them both individually, as well as dancing as a group, changing it up often so that no one was left out in the cold for long. But eventually the song came to an end, bringing the dance to a close. Cliff clapped you on the back. That was a heck of a time. Kyra, who hadn't released you once the music had finished, still had one arm hooked around you and was clutching your wrist with her other hand. She nodded fervently. Absolutely, this has been a marvelous evening. You grinned at them, relieved and delighted that they were enjoying themselves. The day might be about you and Cove, but it was also about your families coming together. Their approval meant a lot to you. Thanks. Cove, flanked by your moms on either side, came over to rejoin you. Their spirits were high, and you had no doubt that they'd enjoyed themselves just as much as you and Cove's parents had done, though Cove still looked a little flustered.
You're good.
That was wonderful. Bravo. Baxter's voice rang out through the speakers once more. For our next event, we need the family to stay right where they are. Everyone who would like to join them is more than welcome to do so. The couple have arranged to continue the evening celebration with a traditional money dance. Baxter's words had the intended effect. People came over and, led by those who experienced one of these dances before, formed a loose circle around you and Cove. As more guests joined, the ring filled in until it was tightly packed with eager family faces. Despite being the center of attention all day, Cove still wasn't injured to it. Wasn't inured to it. It looked like that was especially true when the onlookers were so close. You caught him biting his lip unconsciously, but he busied himself space with taking your hand and getting into position for the dance. You squeezed his hand reassuringly, your heart pounding with competing exhilaration and tension. The guests who were into festive spirit of the event, already laughing and grinning, and when the chosen song began to play. The money was pinned on yours and Cove's clothes. The money was thrown into the air. No, it was pinned. It was pinned. You and Cove began moving together to the beat of the song. Around you, guests were readying themselves for action. Some had their money out already, while others were digging out purses and wallets. None of them more prepared at this moment than Cliff, unsurprisingly. He was clutching a huge, thick stack of bills in both hands. There better be some 20s there. There better be some 20s. You didn't need to count them to know that he easily had far more than anyone else. But Cliff was always one to share the wealth, and he offered bills out to those around him who didn't have quite as many. Some habits died hard. Yeah, people... Not very many people like carry cash nowadays. So when we did the money dance, there were a few people who were ready and had had dollar bills to just pass out to the crowd, which is really sweet. Your friends and families took turns coming up to attach money to you and Cove while an assistant moved around the crowd, keeping everyone well stocked up on pins. You had to adapt your positioning to accommodate the sticking, minimizing your movements when someone was in the process of attaching the bills to your clothes. Cove learned the lesson the hard way. He was so absorbed in staying upright that he didn't notice Mom at his side and moved his arm right in a pin's path. He squeaked and instinctively pulled his arm back, then he put his palm to his face while she laughed and patted his arm better before trying again. Cove was a lot more conscious of his surroundings after that. The process of pinning the money to your clothes meant that you got to share a few moments with guests individually, which you appreciated. Yeah, that was the most fun. The most fun was I got to really dance one-on-one with people. Even if it was just a whispered message or for luck or a shared smile while they worked, you treasured each interaction. Some attendees got creative, making chains of money to attach in one go. Miranda had even folded the bills into flower shapes before pinning them on. That is such a Miranda thing. I want my dance with Derek. I want to dance with Derek. You felt absolutely swaddled in love from your family and friends, and the happy faces around you assured you that everyone was having a great time getting to the spirit of the dance. The song was nearing its end. There was a flurry of activity as everyone made sure to use up their cash before it finished. People cheered as the dance reached its conclusion, applauding and whooping and whistling with excitement. The boisterous energy of the money dance had set the mood right, and your nostalgic sounds got turned up, inviting people to come forward. That had only been the start of the celebration. The dance floor bustled with more and more attendees, and over in the seating area, family and friends were catching up over animated conversations. Satisfied that people are having a good time, You decided to dance with everyone. Dance more with just Cove. Go sit down and wait for the thick of it. Stand by to watch it. I'm dancing with everyone. Oh my goodness, I am all over the place at every wedding, including my own. You happily shimmed into the crowd, ready to make the most out of the occasion. It wasn't often that you got to gather up the people most important to you like this, and even rare for it to come with good music and the opportunity to dance. Rotating partners for each dance meant that you could spend time with various guests one-on-one. You danced with Derek, and with Liz, gliding around on the floor along to the music. You continued to spend time with a whole bunch for song after song, but of course, you made sure to save some dances for your new husband, too. The merrymaking continued right up until it was time for dinner to be served. All the action must have helped them work up an appetite as the guests complied readily. They quickly filed back to their tables, ready for a delicious meal as soon as it was announced. You settled right into your seat at the head table. Cove sat up in his own chair excitedly, reaching out for the napkin wrapped silverware in preparation. He was ready for dinner. The waitress, clad in black from top to bottom, came to stand across from you. She had a frosty pitcher of water in her hands. While setting that down at a spot on the tabletop between you and Cove, she spoke out in a friendly tone. "Can I get you anything else to drink? Could I have some orange juice, please? I'll have a coffee. Can I have a tea? Juice for me, too. A glass of wine. Could I use a beer? It'd be nice to have one of our mixed cocktail options. Just water for me. I'll just say, can I have tea? Iced tea. I'll have an iced tea. I've got it. I'll get that right to you." You both thanked her as she spun on her heels and made a beeline to the drink counter. At that same time, more servers began pouring into the space coming from the opposite direction. They were spreading out between the tables, collecting orders to the rest of the guests. One of the darkly dressed figures stood out from the rest of you. With perfect poise and not a hair out of place, Baxter stood on the sidelines to supervise the process. He was well into his work. Servers ebbed and flowed between the tables as drinks were provided to each individual who requested one. That wasn't where it stopped. Soups and salads were then carted out before the main course. Cove took in the satisfied inhalation of the steam coming off the soup. You could catch a whiff of the scent yourself. It was savory and rich. He scooped a spoonful out and dug it right in. The rest of the guests followed, taking first tastes of what you had to offer them. Spirited discussions were had between bites. There were plenty of compliments. Your mom, Miranda, and Liz sounded especially pleased with how it came out. They were chatting to the others at their tables about the subtle flavors. And many of your attendees made use of the extra spice that had been made available. Of course. Cliff, Kyra, Ma, Terry, Derek, and your own lovely husband each added their own levels of added heat. For your meal, you kept it as is. You added a little spice. You added a moderate amount of spice. You added a lot of spice. You drowned it. I drowned it in spice. It was delicious, and exactly the way you had wanted. Mom's jovial tone carried itself above the rest of the voices. "So, how much are we getting here? There were those appetizers from before. Now there's more, and the meal hasn't even. There were those appetizers from before, and now there's more, and the meal hasn't even shown up. I've lost count keeping track already." "Oh, I asked. It's a 6-course meal, not counting dessert." "That many?" Mom was hit with a wide-eyed shock, and Kyra only smirked. "My guess is that was the maximum amount. That's why they went with 6. "That's right." The two mothers began to laugh together. "Now that sounds right." When the bowls were polished clean, the servers began to reappear, clearing the dishes away to make room for more. The main course was ready, and the guests were ready for it. You and Cove had the dish placed in front of you first. Cove shifted back and forth, even letting out an excited squeak. When the rest of the plates were brought out, you could pick out oohs and ahs about how amazing it looked and the generous portion size of Filipino food. That's what I'm thinking. You even heard mentions of the swirls on the dishes by some discerning guests. Yes, those swirls of those dishes. Very few words were spoken as the dinner truly began. Everyone became fully immersed in their food. It was quite the hit. Guests were given time to enjoy their meals while they were fresh before the reception events continued as you had planned. Baxter strolled up to a side counter set on the opposite end of the head table. You had a perfect view of it. Casually, he took up the microphone that he'd used throughout the rest of the event to make another announcement. "Good evening. From the staff and I'd like to thank you all for being such lovely guests to serve. We hope you've enjoyed your dinner. Now, this mic will be left open for a time to allow anyone who wishes to make a speech about the couple. You are all welcome to come share memories, words of congratulations, and or your appreciation for Hark and Cove Hold an Angel, if you feel comfortable doing so." He didn't hog the mic any longer than necessary, placing it back down in the center of the stand as soon as his brief message had been made clear. Baxter directed a soft smile down to you and Cove as he left the space open for others to speak. Cliff probably will be the one to start. A nervous rhythm began to play out next to you as Cove's fingers were drummed against the edge of the table. You watched a furrow grow deeper into his brows. He was preparing himself for whatever was about to be said. There would likely be some friendly teasing, and almost certainly he was going to get emotional again. Once the mic was available, the first person to stand was your ma. She hopped right up and made her claim to the front table. Softly, she spoke across the space directly to you and Cove, her words being carried through the air to where you sat. Congratulations once more, my wonderful children. This wedding feels like a dream, as much as my own did when I was around your age. Her head tilted to the side towards the other guests and began a formal speech.
Well?
Our Hark has been a joy to our family lives, and everyone else who's met him, since the day we were brought together. But watching how he's grown with Cove has been special. The way Hark treasured the little stuffed crab keychain Cove had brought for him, holding on to it all these years after. Cove's nervousness over attending a formal party, but doing it anyway because it was with Hark. There was the one long weekend where Cove came day after day to take Hark on charming trips for no special reason at all. Her eyelids rested closed as she let out a sentimental sigh. When Hark walked through the door at only 18 to announce that he had proposed to his beloved Cove on the Poppy Hill, I thought Pam would faint, and maybe Liz too. But he knew what he was doing, and I believed him then. And I could keep going. There's so many memories. Hark can clear the tears from his eyes better than anyone else when he wasn't the one causing them. Happy tears, of course. It was beautiful, and it still is. Her tender gaze shifted to the two of you once more, signaling the end of her talk had arrived.
I love you.
I can only hope you'll be able to continue growing together for many more years to come. I love both of you very much. Your husband's eyes had already begun misting. After knowing her for all this time, Cove developed a deep affection for Ma. Hearing that she cherished those important memories the same the way you and he had did have an impact. She slipped the mic in its proper place, brushed at her bangs, and walked to her seat again on light steps. Your mom brushed down her dress as she stood on her feet and began to walk. This was her chance to take the stage, and she was going for it. When she put one hand on the mic, the tip of her finger tapped the top of doing a sound test. The puff of sound echoed out, and your mom was satisfied with that. She lifted her head high, facing the crowd, and smiling merrily.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone, for coming today, and for all the gifts you brought. I don't know how we're going to pack all that up to get it to their place, but we'll make it work. Well, where there's a will, there's a way. She had to lower the mic a bit, already snickering under her breath. Well, Hark, Cove, our families went through a ride with you two being brought together. Talk about a force of nature. You were attached at the hip as soon as you met, and you have been ever since. Great. Attached to the hip ever since. And Cliff almost had a heart attack when we all took that RV out and Cove had disappeared from his sleeping bag in the morning. And it turned out he snuck into the loft with Hark. Grinning ear to ear, lost in those old memories, she shook her head. But at the end of it all, I think you were both good influences on each other. We were even good influences then. What you talking about, Ma? What you talking about, Mama? Or at the least, you've made one another very happy. That's good enough in my mind. You really took that promise when you were 13 to treat Hark well to heart, huh, Cove? Thanks. Cove smacked a hand to his cheek automatically. It didn't do anything to hide the color burning into his face. And, I'm sure things will work out because of how much you have in common. Like your genders. Same as me and Lenny. Mom snorted and laughed. That was funny. Mom snorted in laughter at her own line. She waved that way with her free hand, wanting to be more serious. When she could muster the even tone she had been aiming for, your mom finished her speech. I love you, kiddos, and it's sure true that you're hardworking adults now. But don't ever forget that your ma and I are here if you need something. Your family will always be there. She had been able to coax out some chuckles from Cove throughout. He was mostly amused over her penchant for jokes than the actual jokes themselves, but the laughter had been shaky with emotion. He really had come to love your mom. With a quite pleased grin, Mom left the mic behind to return to her spot, right by her wife. Smooth as silk, Liz rose from her seat and glided across the floor to the speaker's stand. But Liz took her time before saying anything, evening out her bangs, clearing her throat, fiddling with the angle of the mic when she did take hold of it. She didn't have a care in the world. That couldn't be said for everyone. Cove tensed in apprehension of whatever she was going to say. He had to know what she was planning. Luckily for him, she did eventually begin her speech and end his suspense. As I'm sure many of you know, I'm Hark's older sister, so one of the very few people who have been around him for longer than his husband. She was smirking already, 2 sentences in. We're pretty close, is the thing. I don't think we were really that close, sis, but Go ahead. She flicked the hand without the mic into a non-comical soft shrug. But honestly, Hark, if I realized you'd be marrying that new kid back when I was 10, I might have had to disown you. A scrawny, grumpy boy who didn't even know how to play pretend, right? Certainly not, even if I did joke about it happening. Hey. Cove gasped indignantly that she would say such things, but things being said, she continued on regardless of his objection. And yet here we are, at your wedding, to that very crybaby.
Unreal.
Unbelievable. It's called a roast, Cove. It's called a roast. It's part of the deal. It's part of the package. Exasperated at Liz's angle for her congratulations speech, Cove slumped lower in his seat, took his drink in both hands, and sipped at the juice like a furious elementary school kid. Come on, Cove. You gotta take a joke. You gotta be able to laugh at yourself. Come on, Cove. Her head slowly shook, the ends of eyebrows bent, and a less crooked smile came to her face. The tone wasn't silly anymore. But with all of that out of the way, what I actually want to say now is, you made the right choice. He's the one for you. Day after day, week after week, year after year, Cove was there. Even more than I was, a lot of the time. Don't get your hopes about this meaning I'm done teasing you about it, but for today, I want to thank you, Cove. Those big, watery eyes of yours have never lost sight of Hark since he caught them.
Thank you.
It brings peace to my heart to know that there's another person out there who cares for him as deeply as he deserves to be. Oh, he didn't have another comment then. Liz's grin widened as if she knew exactly the reactions she'd been getting. Congratulations to my good old baby brother and his special boy. Love you. With that, she lifted the mic towards the two of you as though she was toasting a glass. That wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. At the last moment, Liz had made Cove smile, and his wide eyes were as damp as she had described. Liz daintily left the microphone where it belonged and returned to her chair, fully satisfied. There was a clattering of silverware and dishes as Lee sprung out from her table. She skipped away, not paying any mind to that. She was too impatient for the chance to talk. Somehow it reminded you of all those times you chatted over the phone, the fun and excitement of sharing what was going, even when you weren't right next to each other. She took the mic right into her hand, projecting plenty of stage presence standing in front of an audience. My cousin Hark and I are the same age and got to grow up together. 'Cause of that, I've gotten the joy of watching the story of him and his next-door neighbor, Cove. They were totally just friends, first of all, and then when romance finally happened, I was invested in the twists and turns of the tale. So let's just say I wasn't caught off guard when I heard Hark propose to him. She giggled with as much joy as when she first found out the big news. This couldn't have been ended better. I'm your biggest fan. Wow, she was our biggest shipper, I know. But as happy as I really am about your adventures in love and marriage, the best part for me has been my own relationship with the two of you. Leandra took a moment to slow down and express her thoughts with complete honesty. Hark, you're among my closest family and my very best friends. And Cove, you're not just my cousin's husband. You're my friend too, and my family just the same. Congrats on your stunning future together. I love both of you. Aww. Cove had to bite his lip to keep it from wobbling. The earnestness truly touched him. I'm surprised she didn't mention anything about the boat trip, because that was a big thing I did with Lee. Her high energy attitude, probably because I spent the majority of it apparently sick in bed, apparently. Her high energy attitude quickly returned though. Lee dropped the mic down and blew a couple kisses your way before she swished back to her seat. Derek came out. My best man. Why didn't it start with the best man speeches? Derek came out from the seating area to give his own talk. He had a relaxed stance when he grabbed the mic and waved over at the head table.
Congrats.
Hey, congratulations again to you, Hark and Cove. You found your other halves, and anyone can see it. You're good for each other. You're good to each other. Whether you got married or not, no one would have questioned that. Commitment, though. It's been a heck of an event, too. Derek beamed with a boyish charm, looking just like he did the first time you'd met him. Thanks for being my friend. It's been a pleasure to know you, too. Derek's heartfelt appreciation had to awkwardly be interrupted with one quick addendum. Oh, but I'm not going anywhere. I'm getting that time management thing under control. Thank you, Derek. He took the chuckles from the crowd in good stride and wrapped things up for real. Thank you for letting me talk. I'm a little bit disappointed. I mean, this is my best man. I'm a little disappointed that he wasn't... He could have said more. As whoever is your best man or maid of honor or however you want to call it, best attendant, they should let them do more. Carefully, Derek hooked the microphone back into its stand. When he let go, he hovered his hands nearby for a second to catch it as it fell. Yeah, because I mean, it's choosing. For me, choosing your best man or your maid of honor or your best attendant is a big deal. So I would have loved. Don't get me wrong. This entire DLC has been amazing, and the sheer magnitude of it and the sheer effort and care put onto it is amazing. I'm not knocking that at all. But there's always room for improvement. And that is only a feedback just because there's always room for improvement. Carefully, Derek hooked the microphone back into its stand. When he let go, he hovered his hands nearby for a second to catch it if it fell. When he was sure all was well, he nodded confidently and lightly jogged to his seat. Cove watched the entire exit with a smile growing larger and larger on his face. A beat passed, and then Miranda stood. She gripped at the front of her flowing dress, pulling it from the ground as she walked over to the mic. Her shoulders were shyly hunched up, and her head was low. If she wasn't surrounded by tables full of people watching, you might have thought she was sneaking out of bed while trying not to get caught by her parents. When Miranda finished tiptoeing to the front, she gathered up the microphone in both of her hands, her eyes closed rather than directly facing the crowd. She may not have been comfortable with public speaking, but her desire to participate outweighed that.
Hi.
Hi. I love how her dress matches her eyes. It's so beautiful. Cove's focus was set ahead, but you caught out of the peripherals of your own gaze that your husband's mouthed a hi back at her instinctively. Very sweet. Thank you, Hark and Cove, for inviting me. It's been a wonderful day, and I'm so happy for you too. The stiffness of her presentation smoothed out the more she got to talking. She was even able to giggle as her affectionate feelings for her friends eclipsed the worries of saying them in public. It's been great attending a party of yours after you two were always nice enough to come to mine. Cove laughed along with her warm, far-gone days of bounce houses, noisemakers, and pin the tail on the donkey reflected in his jubilant face. You're both amazing, and I really appreciate the support you've given me, being there when I needed someone to talk to. You've had such a positive impact on my life. And I'm just really lucky to be your friend, and I hope we'll always be friends. Congratulations, Hark and Cove. Cove nodded firmly in silent agree with her wish, while scrubbing at his eyes. Miranda put down the mic with some oomph, then twirled around to return to her seat. Her steps were much lighter than before. Terry was waiting there with open arms to give a squeeze, clearly proud of his girlfriend for doing so good, doing so well. So well. Her smile stayed bright even from a distance. Terry jumped onto his feet with a grin, strolling right over the counter. He scooped up the mic in one hand and gestured ahead of him with the other. I met Cove and Hark in high school. I didn't know them the longest out of everybody, but I could tell they were some cool people right away. Them and Randy were my best group of buddies back then, and we kept that friendship train going despite all the stuff that's happened. He tapped a finger against the tabletop in time with every specific he mentioned. Graduating school, moving to different places, me and Miranda dating, the two of them getting married, and things about us not being what other people thought they were. Also, we lived through that one summer when it wasn't just the four of us, sometimes it was the five of us. Right, my pal Baxter? He brought the mic even closer to his grinning mouth for emphasis and dramatically pointed off to the side. Now we're all here again. You probably hadn't planned for that. And he was right. Having been quietly discussing next steps with the server, Baxter's mouth hung open in mid-word. Suddenly being brought into focus outside of this expertly laid schedule knocked him completely off rhythm. Cove barked a gratified laugh, equally as shocked, but far more amused. Baxter's head turned in the direction of the sound, his mouth finally closed to a wry smile. It seemed Terry brought the gift of teasing someone other than you or Cove, and it was more than a welcome offer as far as Cove was concerned, especially since it was taken in good spirits. There was something remarkable about being able to include Baxter in your group's merrymaking, the same way as anyone else. Terry nodded knowingly, then casually transitioned into his main point. And I guarantee our friendship is going to stay on track. No matter what, there's no one who could take your places. From me to you, and from you two to each other. Good work tying the knot. Your catches. Terry left his speech and his mic there. He paused to applaud your union graciously before flipping his hand out into a wave as he walked off. I was like, flipping what? It's like, what? Flipping what? Cove gave a big friendly wave in return. His eyes were glossy. Soon as Terry hit his chair again, Miranda took his arm and happily began whispering to him about the speech. Kyra pushed herself up from her seat and went right to the front without hesitation. Eagerly, she lifted the mic to her lips and said, "I can't believe my babies are having a wedding right now." The unexpected declaration sent chuckles rumbling throughout the crowd. That color, unfortunately, does not mesh well with her skin tone. It just flushes her out. It's just... I said orange? That's not orange. That's like fleshy peach. Like peach / flesh. That's not orange. I would have picked a far better shade than that. Especially because it just looks awful on Kyra right now. Just awful. The unexpected declaration sent chuckles rumbling throughout the crowd. Anywhoosies, yeah. Definitely, clothes should not match your skin tone that well, because it just doesn't work. Anywhoosies, Kyra continued with a wink and a smile. It was a treat getting to meet Hark in person for the first time, though I already felt like I knew him, thanks to all the stories Cove loved to recount about him. In a pouting whisper, Cove spoke out about that description of events. Mom, whenever I got to visit Sunset Bird or you visited me, I came to see firsthand more and more what marvelous individuals you were growing into. You bloomed right before my eyes, like perfect white poppies on the hill in your childhood neighborhood. Every moment I've been able to spend with each of you has been a gift. We had some pretty wild times over the years. I count my lucky stars that I got to be the mom to such an amazing boy. And Hark? The buoyant tone of Kyra's words faded into something softer, sweeter. I'd like to thank you personally for helping my baby make himself a home again. I'm truly grateful for that. There was a sniffling at your side after that. Cove tugged at the tablecloth in front of him, unconsciously, needing to do something. Mom, congratulations, both of you. I love you. I love you too. It didn't matter that she couldn't hear. She knew. Kyra used the bottom of her palm to wipe her eye, placing the mic on its stand with the other hand. She took an additional moment to look up at you and Cove gently, and then Kyra stood back to her table. Cliff leaned over towards her and gave 2 thumbs up for that speech. His zealousness made Kyra cover her mouth in amusement and embarrassment. And then Cliff raised from out of his seat. The most contentious figure in your husband's early life who grew to become his best man. Cliff took large strides to reach the speaker's stand, but his fingers froze in place before they thought they could grasp the mic. He stared down at it, collecting his thoughts, or his emotions, or both. When he was ready, his hand locked around the base of it, and he lifted the mic up higher. A grin pulled across his face. There was a crinkle around the corner of his eyes. Hey, sport. Hi, Hark. Hi, Dad. Cove's reply was barely audible. He might not have realized he'd done it. Cove's irises were shaking as he looked ahead intently. Well. Cliff's expression turned instant. He was facing the crowd, but his gaze had drifted even further away to something in the past that was long gone. I remember the first day Cove and I moved to Sunset Bird when I met Hark. I didn't know where my boy was then, or what I was doing, or anything at all, really, as you'll soon be able to tell. He chuckled weakly over the self-derisive comment. It didn't do much to lighten anyone's mood, including his own. He remained wistful. I was sitting around on a curb when Hark strolled up the road, heading home. I knew him, or I knew of him. I'd met Pamela and Naleni already. Talking to them is how Cove got away from me. Cliff shook his head, trying not to get too lost in his complicated mess of thoughts on those times. But that's not the point. What matters is that I'd heard Hark was their 8-year-old, the same age as my Cove, and that Hark was the only one in that age in the neighborhood. In my infinite wisdom, I'd picked out a place that wasn't exactly a family-friendly community. It was mostly a bunch of retired vacationers. He gritted his teeth and placed a hand to his forehead, feeling the sting of that day as if it was fresh. And speaking of, did I mention it was the start of summer break when we moved? What was my little boy going to do now that I dragged him out there? I wanted him to have someone to play with, someone he could talk to. I wanted him to be happy. There was a heart-wrenching crack in Cliff's voice as he spoke about what his feelings had truly been. At that moment, everything was going wrong. It felt like a dead end no matter which way I went, and I was so sure that there wouldn't be anyone for Cove if it wasn't Hark. In one more valiant effort to try not to take the mood of your wedding too heavy, Cliff gave a goofy shrug. So I offered Hark $20 to be his friend. It's just funny to me? The straight line of his shoulders lowered on each side like a root sagging after years of having to stay solid.